They show us a guy who can count numbers very well. He works in a team. That evening he was able to win more than $600,000. They communicated with the team by gestures. The girl showed a gesture that meant that the guy needed to leave the casino urgently. People in black suits were already following him. The guy hastily started collecting chips, and this is where this scene ends. The guy was sitting for an interview. His name was Ben, and he was playing in that casino at the beginning of the movie. The professor who read his resume was very surprised because the guy had a lot of awards and achievements in mathematics. The professor's name was Phillips. After reading, the professor said that they have 78 people in the institution for one place and all have a lot of achievements and awards. It was about the Harvard Medical Institute. Ben said that his biggest dream is to get there and finish his studies. The professor said that the guy must prove his uniqueness and his special mind, then he will receive a scholarship. Ben parked his bike and hurried to work. He was told that he was being promoted and now he would be a manager. While working, Ben was thoughtful and his friend asked what was going on with him. Ben said that he needed to write such an essay so that he would be given a scholarship to Harvard University. He didn't know what to write about and didn't know how to stand out from other people. Ben complained that he needed $300,000 a year for training and therefore he needed a scholarship. After a while they went to a bar to celebrate Ben's birthday. His friends also had money problems because they started arguing because they couldn't pay the bill. After the holiday, Ben walked his mother to the car. She told him to learn to have fun and not just to study. Lesson started the next day. The teacher asked to explain Newton's method. Ben's friend raised his hand and his answer was very simple and superficial. The teacher asked the students to tell him something that he did not know. Ben raised his hand. He said that Newton stole this theory. The teacher was a little surprised and he decided to offer him one task that Ben solved without any problems. The teacher was shocked and finished the lesson. In physical education, Ben met a girl who he really liked. She waved to him, but it turned out that she was waving to another guy. In the evening, Ben sat in an empty room and tried to write an essay. His classmate came up to him and told him to follow him. They went into the office where some of his classmates and his teacher were. The teacher's name was Mickey. First girl's name was Kiana, the guy's name was Fisher, the other was Choi, and the last was Jill. Mickey asked him if he had played blackjack. Ben replied that he had not. The teacher explained the game and also stated that if he learns to count cards correctly, he can become very rich. But Ben refused and left. At work, a married couple approached Ben and asked how much the things they took cost. Ben counted everything in his mind and thereby caused admiration among people. A girl came to work for him. She asked him to pick up a tie. The girl chose a tie and threw it on Ben. She began to talk about blackjack and that she had played since childhood with her father. But Ben, without thinking twice, refused again and the girl left. Mickey's teacher quickly dealt out cards and the rest of the guys tried to count them in time, but they couldn't. Suddenly the correct number was said by a voice from behind. Everyone turned around and it turned out that Ben had come. Long hours of training began, where Ben showed himself perfectly. In the classroom, instead of studying biology and chemistry, Ben began to study mathematics even more. He and the team came up with their own language of communication to be inconspicuous. Ben was walking with Mickey. He said that he agreed to play only because he needs $300,000 for training, and when he earns them, he will immediately stop playing. The teacher agreed. Also, the teacher said that it is completely safe and no one will catch them. At this time, the guards were beating a guy who was trying to count cards in blackjack. In fact, it was not prohibited, but it was not profitable for casino owners. The guards beat him and told him not to show up at the casino anymore. Meanwhile, the whole team was sitting in a cafe and discussing blackjack and how to play correctly. After leaving the cafe, Ben took out a note with the address and headed into a dark alley where he knocked on the door. They opened it and let him in. It turned out that it was an underground casino. He noticed the first member of the team who gave him a sign with his hands. Ben sat down at the table and began to listen carefully to what his friend was saying. They had their own language. Ben bought $300 worth of chips and looked around. He noticed the rest of the team. The game started. Ben started winning and different people started coming up to him who were interested in watching the game. Suddenly, a bag was thrown over Ben's head and they began to drag him somewhere. They dragged him into some room and started asking him how he counted the cards. Ben didn't admit it. The bag was removed and it turned out that it was his team, which meant that he had passed the test. They went outside and Mickey announced that they were flying to play blackjack tomorrow. The whole team arrived at the airport. Fisher said they needed to go to the bathroom, but Ben said he didn't want to. Fisher insisted that they go there. They went into the booth and Fisher told Ben to take off his pants. He opened the bag and took out bundles of money and told them to hide them. There were $250,000 in the bag. Ben reluctantly began to push them into his pants. During the check, Ben was very worried. Money was sticking out of his pants. He passed the check, but suddenly he was asked to stop. Ben began to worry very much, but it turned out that he had forgotten the bag. On the plane, Ben repeated all the lessons with maps and looked out the window with great admiration. When they arrived, a car came for them and they went to the city. Ben looked out the window and marveled at all the beauty of the city. The whole team settled in a very beautiful hotel. Mickey's teacher handed out new documents to the team. Mickey reminded them of the rules, namely that they are not familiar with each other and you always need to remember that cameras are installed in the casino. Their mission has begun. Ben went into the casino and began to carefully observe all the players. The girl from his team made the right gesture and Ben sat down at the table. He took out 10,000 and started playing. The dealer began to deal out cards and Ben carefully began to count. Ben started winning. A lot of time passed. He continued to sit at the table and play. The chips on his table were growing in number. Time passed and Ben sat down at different tables and won. After a long and successful game, Ben asked the dealer to change the chips to larger ones and finished the game. After a while, Jill came to the sleeping Ben's room and woke him up. She gave him his share and said that he earned the most. The phone rang. Mickey announced a general collection. Everyone gathered in one room and Mickey started talking. He said that yesterday during the game Fisher had several problems. He did not notice the special gestures that the team gave him, but in general everything went well and he praised the team for their work. The next day, the same thing started. Ben walked around the tables and watched the special gestures of his team. Jill signaled and Ben sat down at her desk. He took out the money and started playing. At this time, we see a lot of people watching the casino. A man came to them and said that at the 4th and 5th tables the casino has been suffering losses for the second day. The main guard promised to look at the cameras, but the team was no longer in danger. Their plane landed in their hometown. Ben decided to go to his mom and visit her. At lunch, Mom gave Ben a check for $68,000 and said that she had been saving them for a long time and they would be useful for him to enter the university. Ben decided to lie to her and said that he had received a scholarship to study and now he did not need Mom's money. Mom was very happy to hear this news. Ben returned the check and told her to spend the money on herself. Ben came to his room, opened a notebook and wrote down how much he earned for training. After writing down the information, he took the money and hid it in the ceiling. At this time, his friends came in and looked at him in surprise. They asked why he was standing on the bed and Ben said that he liked to jump. They went to a bar where his friends discussed dancing girls and gave an assessment of their appearance. Ben wasn't interested in doing that. Suddenly Ben saw Jill and walked up to her. He bought her a beer. His friends didn't believe in it because they were always afraid to approach girls. Ben saw the surprise of his friends. He approached them and asked them not to look at her. Ben and Jill rode the train and had fun chatting. Jill was talking about her father. Ben tried to kiss Jill, but Jill refused. Jill apologized and said that they only had a business relationship and got off the train. Ben's life was divided into two halves. The first part of the time he was engaged in school. The other part of the time he flew to Las Vegas and earned a lot of money. He also had a lot of fun with Jill. It seemed to him that life was very good and it would never end. But at this time, the main guard began to watch him. He noticed Ben and remembered that he had won a large amount of money last weekend as well. The guard printed out his photo and also stated that most likely Ben is not the most important and most likely he works in a team. Ben and Mickey were walking down the street. Fisher passed by and didn't say hello. Mickey said he was jealous of him because of his success. Ben approached his friends. They had suspicions that he was meeting with the teacher too often and quit his job. They assumed that Ben was using bad substances, but Ben said that this was not true. Ben couldn't tell him the truth and he said goodbye to them. After another trip to Las Vegas, the team earned more than $200,000 and they decided to go have fun. Everything was available to them now. They had fun and bought different things. They stopped at the same club and the whole team started having fun. Jill sat down with Ben and they started chatting. Unexpectedly, Jill kissed him. After a while they started working again. Ben went up to the casino and sat down to play as they had agreed. Fisher was sitting next to him and suddenly decided to sit down at Ben's table. It wasn't according to the rules. He was just jealous of him and decided to beat him. At this time, Ben was closely watched by video cameras. The guards noticed that the girl gave a signal to Ben, and only after that he sat down at her table. At this time, violating all the rules of the team, Fisher began a conversation with Ben. He asked stupid questions. Fisher kept saying all sorts of nonsense, and a fight started. Security came running, but all members of the team were able to escape. Ben came up to Fisher, he pushed him and asked why he did it. Mickey approached Fisher, gave him the last payment and told him to go home. Fisher started arguing, but Mickey said he didn't care and now Fisher wouldn't be on the team. When the fight started, Ben managed to pick up the chips before running away, and now they had to be exchanged for real money. But there was a problem. The casino knew their faces and personally they could not do it. Ben suggested using the girls who danced on the dance floor for this, so the casino would not have suspicions. So they did and successfully brought everything out. Mickey praised Ben and said he was a genius. Ben and the whole team went to the club to have fun and dance. Jill came up to Ben and said that she had a free suite and offered to look at it. At the hotel, Ben approached Jill and they started making love. Ben returned to school the next day. Ben opened a crack in the ceiling and started putting money in there. There are already a lot of them there. Ben's friends were sitting on a bench and waiting for him. Ben rode up on a bicycle and apologized for being late. He gave the necessary spare part for their robot and they turned it on, but the robot quickly turned off. It turns out Ben bought the wrong spare part. Friends began to condemn him because a new spare part now needs to wait a long time. His friends told him that now they would build a robot without him. Ben started arguing with them but could not convince them. Then he said that their invention was stupid and it would not be useful. Ben got on a bike and left. Ben once again arrived at the casino. He was joyfully welcomed by the employees. Ben started losing because of his inattention and he decided to bet even more money. Jill came up to him and told him to leave, but he refused. Ben lost. He left the table and left. At the hotel, Mickey ran up to him and started yelling at him. He said he lost $200,000 because of him. Mickey told Ben to return $200,000 to him, but Ben couldn't because he put it aside for studying at Harvard University. Mickey said goodbye to them and left. Ben suggested that we do without Mickey and start playing ourselves. After some hesitation, the team agreed. The game has begun. Ben went from table to table and played with the whole team. At that time, Mickey was at this casino and called the security. The guards approached Ben and started asking how he wins so often. Ben replied that he was lucky, but the guards did not believe it. They took him down to the basement and started beating him. The guards said that if they see him in this city again, they will kill him. Ben came out of the casino covered in blood. He came to school. Walking up to the room, Ben noticed an envelope. There was a note in it saying that he had received a failure in mathematics and now he will not receive a diploma. When he entered the room, he saw a complete mess and the ceiling was broken. The money disappeared. Ben rode up to the house on his bike and Jill came out to meet him. Ben said that Mickey took everything from him and now he needs everything back. He also apologized to Jill for behaving differently and said that money was a bad influence on him. Competitions were held at the school and the robot of Ben's friends won. Ben stood aside and watched it sadly. After that, Ben decided to tell the whole story to his friend. He apologized to his friend and said that he regretted what he had done to him. A friend forgave him without thinking twice. Ben realized that the main happiness is not in money but in his girlfriend and best friend.